Parman's podcast, I think at PMP. He put this up just yesterday or today, and this is Hugh Hefner clashes with feminists on the Dick Cavett show. Why you brought this up is like it amazes me, because this is exactly, and I wish I would have thought of this sooner. I thank you for your contribution here, because this is where the language comes from. This is the Dick Cavett show in 1970, and it is Hugh Hefner talking to feminists. Now, this guy, the host here guy, he gives some of his breakdowns. I might scroll past a little bit of this, but this is where, listen to the language. This is 1970.
Wave a magic wand now that would release you from the yoke of this oppression that you all talk about. What would do it quickly? Is it a whole change of attitude in the Western world?
Yeah, it's a change in education, really. Women are brought up in really hundreds of ways. I mean, from the time they're 2 and 3 years old, to be cute and coquettish and intellectually unserious, to seduce people instead of saying what they want. Mm-hmm. I think it would be, what we would really like is for there to be no necessity for seduction in the world at all, and particularly for there to be no necessity for women to seduce men to get what they want.
Well, now, there's some of you, and I find it hard to not say some of you, because there are different voices speaking for the women's liberation movement.
That's very interesting, because she's assuming that women seduce men because they have to, and not because they want to, because they love attention in a lot of settings, and if they can find the easiest route to get to where they want to go, they'll do it, which is pretty much human nature across the board. Men will use the easiest route to get their results. Right. Women will use the easiest route to get their results, and that's no surprise. And this is what you see when it comes to OnlyFans. It's just the easiest, it's the path of least resistance, right? It's the easiest way to get the money you want. So that kind of idea, I think that's going to be a tough one to fix. I don't think that we're going to ever be at a time where women aren't using seduction.
Now, I'll scroll up a little bit further in here. He's right. You're 100% right, dude. You also have to remember this, is that when it comes to seduction, and remember, this is 1970. This is well before 48 Laws of Power, which was 1998 was when it was published. Was it Art of Seduction, which was actually published in 2000 or something like that, 2002. Art of Seduction, Robert Greene, to his credit, will tell you this, and it's true, is that in all seduction, there has to be willing participants. If a person does not want to be seduced by you, they will not. They have a resistance to it. They will not be seduced by you. It's not some magic power. You have to want to be seduced, and that's the real hard reality, I think, for women, is like when it comes to seduction, or like when we've talked about pickup artists and everything, like guys in the early pickup artist movement or scene, I guess. They used to read our Art of Seduction, right? Red Queen, Art of Seduction, and Selfish Gene. Those were like the big mystery method books that you were supposed to read. And even I have a problem with some parts of Art of Seduction, but he's right about the fact that you have to have a willing participant. Nobody can be hypnotized who doesn't want to be hypnotized. If they're like resistant to you, that you have to sort of like be sort of you got to be vibing with them, right? And so this seduction thing, but that's not really what she's saying here. It's this idea that men have this sort of magical power of seduction over women, or that women have this magical power of seduction over men, and they're doing it without their express, consent to be seduced, which is bullshit. But when you look at these girls again, and we'll see him here again, like listen to the tone. I don't think these girls are. Well, one of them says she's 35. So one girl's like 35, one gal is 35. I don't know how old the long-haired girl is, but a lot of the language is exactly the same thing that you hear today.
To get the results that they want. Prostitution is one of the first,
Optimistic about the ability of men to change. We think there's going to be a struggle, and we don't think that men are going to give up their power and privilege easily, because they benefit.
I love how you can smoke a cigarette on a show back in 1970.
From oppressing women. They really do. Hefner has built an empire based on oppressing women.
Yay!
Is she Is she talking about the same men that have fought and died in wars throughout human history to protect women and children? Or is she talking about the same men that invented birth control, or the ones that invented tampons?
I'm glad he brought up birth control, because I think that's probably the most important aspect of that. But again, and in this case, I'm not saying he's wrong. I'm just saying this is the wrong tack to take. Oh, well, men built this world. I hear Kevin Samuels use this constantly. Well, the computer you're on, a man built, or he thought about it, right? Or he built it, or he, conceived it, kind of thing. Yeah, men essentially are the creators in this world. Are they the oppressors, though? That's the real question. And yeah, you're right. And yeah, we should probably think about that. But the operative here is the fact that she believes that men can change according to social constructionism. That men don't naturally, innately see women as sex objects. We do. Sorry. In 1970, we might not have had the data to actually prove that, because we didn't have the brain scans that show that when a man sees a half-naked woman, whether it's in a centerfold or whatever, sees a full naked woman somewhere, that it triggers the part of a man's brain that is associated with tool use. We know that now. We might not have known that back in 1970, but the idea was everyone is a blank slate, and everything is socially constructed. In fact, everything that these two women talk about, in fact, the entire feminist movement, really in total, but certainly the militant feminist movement of the late 60s and early 70s, is all premised on social constructionism. That's why I say kick out the legs of blank slate equalism and kick out the leg of, well, really emotionalism, but social constructionism, and feminism falls crashing to the ground. You want to know why so many people have such a hard time with evolutionary psychology and Evo bio and really, more updated versions of, like, say, sociology and anthropology, is because it shows that things are a lot more deterministic than we used to think before. Certainly, and I'm not saying it's totally that way. I'm not saying that, social, learning doesn't have anything to do with your software. It does. But our innate abilities, our genetic abilities, our biologically innate evolved differences between men and women are a whole lot more determined by biology and DNA than they are about social constructionism. But if social constructionism is the only framework in which you're going to build an ideology, that's called feminism. And it's a failed meme, and it's a failed ideology. It's a failed and provably failed, because we have data now in the 21st century that shows that this certain aspects for sure prove that, yeah, men do objectify women as sex objects. That's the way we evolved. That's what we're supposed to do. What was it? The other study was when men see a woman, they don't see her as a whole. They see her as a list of parts, right? And this happens instantaneous. This is on the instinct hindbrain brainstem level for lizard brain for men, right? We see women and we look tits, ass, hourglass shape, right? The hips to waist ratio. We look at face, we look for symmetry, and we do this in the blink of an eye. And cross-culturally, by the way, I should say. So it's not just a Western thing or this thing. It's this cross-culturally, human males see women as a list of parts before they see them as a whole. I'm not saying that men don't see women as a whole. They do. But before that happens, in the first instant, that's what happens. I think what's interesting is we have that one, that one meme or that one maxim, it was from the 80s, right? A woman knows within the first 5 minutes if she's going to bang you. Now, I've sort of revised that and said a woman knows within the first 5 minutes if she's not going to bang you. But we're happy to still repeat that. But if I say, well, medically speaking, statistically speaking, neurologically speaking, men see women as objects first and foremost. They're trying to say, I said, why is it that a half-naked woman triggers a man's area of his brain associated with tool use? Because he's trying to solve a problem and he needs a tool to solve the problem. And the problem is reproduction. That's what it is. That's why I see you as a list of parts before they see you as a whole. And there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. If that's all if the guy was just this robot, I only want boobs, right? And all you need is just disembodied boobs, then yeah, maybe that's a problem. But eventually I'm going to say, okay, some of your parts But that's the problem, is that early feminists and late feminists in the 20th century and the 21st century are still clinging to the idea that social construction is what's creating the patriarchy, or the horrible, evil men of, hey, come on, guys, let's go in the back room here and we're going to see what we're going to do to the little ladies. Bullshit. It's not social constructionism.
And pads, which exclusively benefit women. I don't know of any inventions that I can think of, at least. Maybe you guys could give me some that women have created exclusively for the benefit of men, like men have done for women when it comes.
This is funny, okay, and he's right, but that I don't think this is really what he ought to be focusing on with respect to the conversation that's going on here. Now, this is the good stuff. This is the really good stuff. Now, this is the highlight of today's show, and thank you, Poor Man's Podcast, for illuminating this.
With you, Mr. Hefner, because you said it would be like putting Stokely Carmichael on with George Wallace. I don't know which of you is flattered by that, but
feels like Wallace, eh?
I don't know which of you is which, but have you had this reaction before tonight?
Yes, I think Playboy's been singled out along with the Miss America contest and some other things as as the extreme example of what the new feminists feel is the wrong image for women. But having been described as an oppressor, can I respond just a little bit?
All right.
I'm more in sympathy than perhaps the girls realize with
Women.
I'm sorry.
Yes, I'm 35.
Than the ladies realize. I use girls referring to women of all ages.
You should stop.
You want to be called a boy.
Right, there it is. Okay, so just real quickly here, because I gotta call this out. I'm a woman. What did you hear Emma say? When I remember the Emma Thorne videos that I've done where I've kind of like broke down her stuff. One of the things that she gets really bent out of shape with is when guys, incel guys or whatever, call women females. No, we're women. No, use my pronouns. Sound familiar? Use my language. Change our language. Stop using girl. Stop using the language that I don't want you to use. I made the observation yesterday. There's this, I don't know how this came into vogue, but there's this one college professor, college professor, who wants to stop using uppercase letters in the English language because it's hierarchical. There's never been a more egalitarian push for changing society than use the language I want you to use, and that language is going to be equal for everyone. We're all gonna one for you, one for you, one for you. Yeah, we're all going to lower our expectations and change the language. Literally changing the language. This is where this began. You'll hear them use the word. We've already heard it. Oppressor. And patriarchy and everything else. You'll hear that already. But she wants to get snarky. And of course, she's probably on the Dick Cavett show. And of course, the audience. And this is a live audience, by the way. They're all, cheering for the feminists in all of this. And does this not look like we're going to pillory Hugh Hefner? Now, Hugh Hefner's on his game. This is like peak Hugh Hefner. Now, Hugh Hefner has done a lot of things that I think are kind of like whack. Like he wanted to align himself with the feminists. Like he was trying to, you'll see here later on, he kind of like has a little bit of wiggle room. He leverages the feminist movement to make more money, which is exactly what I would expect from a hierarchical, merit-based way of thinking that men have a natural proclivity for.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I get it. I guess. I get it.
I always felt it was complimentary, but
Never thought you'd have your mouth washed out for saying girls.
no, that's right. I'd never thought of girl as being, but I think there's validity to it. I think there's validity. I'd never thought of it as being, condescending.
Look at that. Look at that. How I roll my eye. Because
Your magazine
All right,
has an
but wait,
image of women at an arrested development.
Well, let me respond. Let me respond for just a moment, and then we'll
May I
really
just say
kick
that
it
the
back
ladies
and
in your
forth.
magazine have the opposite of arrested development?
Now here. Well, first of all, the girls in the magazine are admittedly young. The average age of our male reader is 26, so there's a certain logic to that.
19.
But in terms of my attitude on the feminist movement as it exists now, I think that women over generations and centuries have indeed been oppressed. I think there's no question about it.
Yeah.
It's only a relatively short time that they've had the vote, and you know, a short time before that they were allowed to own property. I think there are still many areas in society in which they do not have equal job opportunity.
Yeah. Yet, remember, this is 1970. I want to correct Hef here really quickly. Women could absolutely own property. Again, something else from my fourth book, Religion. There were what were called the coverture laws, and these were laws in the United States. I believe they were from like certainly the 1800s on, and it only took it. I think once women got the vote. I'm not sure when they ceased, but there was the coverture laws were is that women could absolutely own property. They could own their own businesses. They could have money. They could have everything that a man could have. I mean, maybe not to the same degree, but if they came into money through heredity, if they came into a business or they built a business, yes, they could absolutely, and they could certainly own family land. Okay. It wasn't that they couldn't have that. It's that when they got married, the ownership rights went to the husband. That's what they're talking about. I mean, that needs some clarity there. They're called the coverture laws. It was more advantageous, really, for women to be unmarried in a sense of like sort of, independence. I'm a strong, independent woman. Okay, well, then if you were living in the 1800s, like 1800s, early 1800s, that it was more beneficial for you as a woman not to be married. Women had to get married, and they got married way younger than they are now. So if that woman got married and then suddenly her dad died and the property of the family estate transferred to the daughter, well, if that woman was already married, it transferred to her husband. And that wasn't because of sexism or an endemic sexism, at least not primarily. It was because men were responsible for their children and were responsible for their wives. And I mean that in the sense that they were responsible, that they had, if a woman made a decision, if she committed a crime, if she made a bad contractual thing, like a legal, like she put her, like signed away, whatever. If she made a bad business decision, if she made a bad property decision, if she, whatever, that man was the one who was responsible or accountable for her bad decision. That's why the property, that's why the money, that's why all that good stuff that we say, oh, women couldn't have that. No, you could, you just couldn't be married and have it. And it transfers over to the husband, because that if that woman got into a bad, investment, he was responsible. He was the one who had to pay the bill. He was the one who had to pay the fees. And that's how it worked. Voting back then was different. You had to have skin in the game. Voting was seen as not as a right, it's a privilege. You could vote. Only men could vote. Wow, is that sexist? No, it's because they were the ones who would go die in the wars. It's because they had more skin in the game than women. They had more going. The way we think about votes right now is like almost a polar opposite of the way we think about voting back in the 1800s, right? Whatever, prior to women getting the vote anyways. It was something that you had to do. You're forced back. I think there were, I don't know if it's in the United States, but there used to be that it was mandatory. If you could vote, you had to vote. It wasn't like something you could just sort of skip out on. So that there is that. I made that comparison, by the way, to MGTOW, because MGTOW and the black pill right now, because right now the coverture laws go against men. You have more authority and you have more control and power over your life outside of marriage than you do inside of marriage. So what we've effectively done because thanks to gynocentrism, is we've made this generation, well, actually several generations of men, to disincentivize marriage for men. Of course, men still want to get married. PJ Washington. But you have more opportunity, you have more maneuverability, you have more rights, and you'll have more money outside of marriage than you will in. And that's a really devastating blow to family. And it's a really devastating blow to really, the economy too, but it's also, the nation, right? So some things to think about. It's not so much, I hate that he uses the term oppressor, but he doesn't know any better. Well, maybe he did know better. He's just, being cagey about the whole thing.
One of the thrusts of the feminist movement is for better abortion laws. I think Playboy has done as much as any mass media in terms of trying to accomplish exactly that. But I take issue and separate in this one rather fundamental area. There is usually a parallel made between female emancipation and racial equality.
Right.
And
Always
I
trying to
don't think it's
piggyback
the
on
same
civil
thing.
rights.
Even though the feminist movement grew out of the civil rights, the current feminist movement grew out of the civil rights business. For this reason,
distinction.
I don't think that the color of a man's skin is any more important than whether he is blonde or brunette, blue-eyed or brown-eyed. I think whether you are male or female is the beginning of who you are as a human being.
This is based.
I think it's important, and I think that it is important emotionally as well as physically. I think there are differences, and I think there should continue to be differences. I think what we want to try to do is find roles in society that are not as limiting as they've been in the past, and they have been far more limiting for women than men, admittedly, but very limiting for both in the past. I hope we're going to evolve into a society in which the broadest spectrum of opportunities exist for both men and women, but I think that to begin with, we are, you know, I like very much Mary Calderon's comment in a recent Playboy interview in which she said, you know, she's less interested in women's rights than human rights. I think that it's...
Would you like to respond,
I
Susan?
certainly would. The role that you have selected for women is degrading to women because you choose to see women as sex objects, not as full human beings.
Well, it obviously
Hold
is
on
degrading...
now. The day that you...
It obviously is
I
degrading
want to
to
say,
a
I
lot of
haven't
women.
finished. The day that you are willing to come out here with a cottontail attached to your rear end.
And that right there is the gotcha moment that she'd probably been waiting for the entire show. Yeah, you should come out here in a bunny outfit. How would you feel, right? Yay! That's all this was.
I mean, he has made the degradation of women a condition of employment in the Playboy clubs around the country. They have to get into these ridiculous costumes which deny their humanity and their femininity. You make them look like animals. Yes, women aren't bunnies. They're not rabbits. They're human beings.
All right. The Playboy symbol, the rabbit, of course, and the...
And I get what she's saying here, by the way. I get what she's saying, but from her own logic, if you want women to be able to be seen as adults that are out and able to make their own decisions, that means if they decide to get into an outfit because they're looking for an opportunity by a guy named like Hugh Hefner or the Playboy symbol, which granted a lot of women a lot of opportunities, that's their choice, and you have to treat them like adults that can make their own decisions. And I think the feminists of this time frame would have been very disappointed to see what has happened in 2021, where if you...
Actually, I don't. I don't think they'd be disappointed whatsoever, because we've come a long way, baby. The whole, again, this goes back to the dehumanization part of things, right? So we've gone from, if you come out in a bunny outfit for Playboy, that's dehumanizing, to the point where if you disagree with me, if you are not on the feminine imperative gynocentric agenda, you are less than human. Now we've switched that out in 1970. What's in that time, right? 50 years. That's what we've done. We've essentially said, if you don't toe the feminist line, if you don't toe the gynocentric social order, you are less than human. If you disagree that the correct way to experience life is through a female primary lens, is to the female existence is the correct way to live your life, then you are less than human. And if you're innately masculine, if there's parts of your aspect of your personality and your humanness is masculine, and you're literally born that way, I love to use that one. Oh, I was born this way. Yeah, you're born that way when it's convenient for you, and you're not, and everything else is social constructionism when it's not convenient for you. But men and women, and I love this part that Hugh Hefner's talked about, men and women are different. And you know what's funny is that wasn't a radical statement back in the 60s. Men and women are different. Now, they didn't have Hugh Hefner certainly didn't have the advantage of understanding like the innate, biological, psychological differences between men and women that we have today. But that's like a radical statement today. James Damore at Google lost his job because he made that distinction publicly. Men and women are different. Get him out of here. We don't like what you have to say there, mister. Why? Because there is this desperate, legalized, criminalized belief that everyone is blank slate. Everything is socially constructed. And if you even just casually utter the words, men and women are different and we're more different than we are alike. You utter that in any variation of that, you run the risk of going against the gynocentric social order. Get him out of here. cancel him, erase him, because he's drawing attention to our Achilles heel, the blank slate and social constructionism. That's why. Everything crashes down. And I think on some level of consciousness, the people who hold this worldview understand this. Everything crashes down if the blank slate isn't real, if social constructionism isn't real, if it's less real than it is to found a social order on it. Take that away and it's all over. It's all gone.
Give women that choice, you'll find that a lot of women will choose to sexually objectify themselves and use seduction as a means to get what they want. So, but one thing that I really want to highlight with what's going on right now, guys, is this is super important. Look at how they're able to have a conversation, right? Look at how they're able to sit here and talk to each other. And even though they don't agree, they can sit there without crying or walking off or boycotting or whatever it may be. They're able to sit down and have this conversation. And this is what national television used to be. It used to be two people with opposing ideas being able to sit down and have good discord about tough situations, about things that a lot of people can be emotional about. But in this time frame, people were tougher.
That's the difference. Okay. And he's right about this. And I'm gonna scroll past because I want to get back to the interview here, and nothing against him. I think he's absolutely spot on 100% right about this. The other part is this, is that today, when we look at that, when the older feminists, so to call me a woman feminist, is saying, oh, you're degrading women. You're putting them into a uniform. You're creating a role for them to play, right? Which is, flirty bunny, at the Playboy Mansion, it's set the centerfold as there's a definite, to Hugh Hefner's credit, he figured out the template, right? He figured out what, the American male wanted. And at that time, it was just sort of this really more eroticized version of the pinup art that was on on airplanes in World War II, right? I mean, that's what he was really trying to capture. And he got that and made a bajillion dollars off of it. However, the argument that he was putting them into a uniform that they didn't want to be in is false. Number one. How do we know that? Well, we can look at OnlyFans. We can look at how things have changed for the female nature has been exposed courtesy of OnlyFans, courtesy of Instagram, courtesy of social media. They choose that role. They're not enslaved. Nobody forced you to start a OnlyFans. Hugh Hefner didn't say, hey, here's my OnlyFans, or the equivalent of Hugh Hefner didn't say that. They chose that on their own because that is human nature. That is female nature, attention, sexual advertising. Why is it that married women and committed women in long-term monogamous relationships, why is it that they still want to have their Instagram? Why is it why do women go apoplectic when guys say, I want you to cancel your Instagram? Why is it that women say, I want you, or why is it they go crazy when they say, you know what, I know you've had your past or whatever, but I want you to close your social media? Because on some level of consciousness, women will say, well, you know what, I don't know if this guy is the right guy for me, and I want to keep all my options open. How do I do that? I got to keep my sexual advertising going on because in the 21st century, we are our own brands. And dating is just brand management. So to say, hey, I want you to disadvantage yourself in the sexual marketplace because you're now with me. Well, why did that woman get into advertising herself in the first place? She wanted to. She wants to be on OnlyFans. She wants to be in the bunny suit. She wants to wear the ears and the little cottontail. That's OnlyFans, right? I'm in the top 2%, right? They're proud of that. That's the bunny tail. The 2%, that's the bunny tail. That's the ears now. They're choosing this. It's not. I mean, back then they didn't know because we didn't have the advantage of what we have, the information we have now. But that's what that really amounts to.
And they understood that their emotions don't matter. Your results matter. And the only way to get results is to have tough conversations.
I'm going to push this on a little bit. There we go. Not to take anything away from the guy. He's actually spot on.
The symbol was originally a male figure, and it was picked quite innocently and simply some 16 years ago because we felt it was a rather playful and sexual symbol. The fact that the girls are dressed in costumes is no more complex than that, and the girls obviously don't find it degrading, or we wouldn't have as many working with us. In addition,
that's not true.
Just 1 minute. In addition,
Well, they're choosing to work with him.
I know that there are.
That's not
I know that there are a great many women who feel as you do, but there are also 1 out of every 4 readers of the magazine today is female, so there are obviously a lot of other women too. In terms of degrading and wearing a bunny tail, the parallel that's usually made is, why don't you create a women's magazine with nude men? Because there's some kind of a notion that, taking the clothes off is a degrading concept.
Hey, Helen Gurley Brown wants to put a
Yes,
man
I know
in
she does, and I think she may
Cosmopolitan.
do
What do
it.
you think of that and her?
Well, that's another symptom of the same decadent problem, right?
Is
I
she
mean,
just a
yeah.
female half?
Well, I don't know. I'm sort of...
No,
she's
she
not.
isn't.
I mean, Helen Gurley Brown, at least, was the first person who ever said that it was okay for a woman to be single up into her 40s and 50s.
Wow. Sound like something we've heard today. Remember what I said about language that's still being used today? From 1970. This gal right here, I don't know how old does she look? She's got to be in her mid-20s. The other girl's 30, 35, right? Is she even still alive? But this is a young woman. Of course, she demurs when he says, "Well, what about a naked man in a what about Playgirl?" Right? Oh, maybe that's okay. Oh, okay. Well, maybe that's what you needed. Maybe you just needed that equality, right? you needed the guy, the hot guy in the foam cannon party to, be in a magazine or whatever. But this is where this language begins. This is where, like, when I keep saying, where do these memes come from? This is where they come from. They've been around for forever, and they are failed memes. We know they're failed memes now.
One has to give her that. But she...
See, but she's justifying now because there's going to be a man put into a female-dominated magazine.
Mm-hmm.
She's justifying, and I'm sorry if y'all hear some stuff. I don't know why they decided to do construction right when I'm making my damn video.
Let me push it on a little bit. It's basically what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Push this up a little bit more. And again, like I said, not taking anything away from Poor Man's Podcast. Actually, I put the link, by the way, if you want to go look this guy up. He's actually really spot on with a lot of his stuff.
Runs a magazine for men who want to seduce women, and we don't think that's a proper, that's a sole relationship between men and women, or even certainly not the most important one. And maybe that's the reason that all these things about male infidence and stuff like that you and Dr. May were talking about earlier has been going on.
I wonder if we can get
a hassle. In other words, if you have a relationship with somebody, why do you have to form a big thing? I mean, some guys you have crummy relationships with, some you don't. I mean, some of them are great, some of them aren't. Some of them look at you as a sex object, fine. So the ones that like to talk to you.
But those aren't the ones.
No, I mean the ones who like to both go to bed with you and talk to you. You do both of those things. The ones who like to make music and talk to you and go to bed with you and write or whatever you do, draw. You do all those things. I mean, I don't see where the problem is. It's just maybe because I don't see what you're talking about yet. But I don't see the problem yet.
I think we need another show on the subject. We have to pause. We'll be back in a moment.
I thought that was interesting. Thank you, Poor Man's Podcast, for that. That was good.